Welcome to All Grit, No Quit, the show where we dive deep into comeback stories, resilience, and the fight to push through when the odds are stacked against you. Each episode, we sit down with the warriors from all walks of life who have faced the fire and came out stronger. You ready? Let's dive in.
Welcome. I'm Tyson Lawrence, the host of All Grit, No Quit, and your resident connoisseur of comebacks and purveyor of persistence. And my first guest here today is somebody I admire and I'm excited to have on the show. He's a sales and marketing consultant, podcaster, keynote speaker, soon-to-be author, amateur golfer, husband, and fellow girl dad, Trey Griggs. Welcome.
Amateur golfer can mean a lot of things. I don't get paid to play, is what you're saying. That's really about it.
I don't know if you're going to be insulted by that or not. But. Not
a chance, man. It's good to be here, Tyson. I'm so excited for this new podcast and just for the brand that you're building and the messages you're putting out there. I'm going to plug your book a little bit. I've had the privilege of reading through a copy of your book, and it's changed my life. It's made me think about things that and remind me of lessons I've learned along the way that you forget about or someone never learned about. So I appreciate you being vulnerable to share your story and to get that out there, man. It's going to be great.
Well, I appreciate it. And likewise, Trey, I think, self-awareness is an important part of grit and one of the aspects of it. And you got a book coming out, and I think that's why it was important to have you on as one of my first guests, was to talk about self-awareness and, how that factors into, being successful in life and bouncing back from adversity. So, but for those of you who don't know you, and a little bit beyond the bio, who is Trey Griggs?
Well, I am a husband, 20 years, just celebrated 20 years with my wife, Tammy. Father of two daughters, Hannah, 17, Naomi, 15. Can't believe that they're that age. And I'm kind of a jack of all trades, a generalist in many ways. I'm a salesperson who thinks about the world from a marketing lens. I love to speak and educate and help people out, and it's just been a fun journey of entrepreneurship, figuring out where I fit in this market, figuring out where I fit in our industry and transportation, and it's just been an incredible ride. I mean, I think if I told you all the jobs I had, it doesn't even make sense. But here we are. We've made it to this point, and it's been a fun ride.
Well, that's what's brought you to this point. I think having a lot of diversity in your jobs and experiences. I think some people stay in an alley and they don't get out and they don't have an opportunity to spread their wings and do some of the things and find out what they're good at. And so I think that kind of leads us into talking about self-awareness and figuring that out. What does it mean to you? What does self-awareness mean to you? I mean, what's your definition? Has it evolved over time? I'm curious to see from your perspective what you think about or what you consider self-awareness.
As a former college athlete, I think about a quote that my coaches used to say all the time, and that is, know your role and do your job. Right. And there's something to be said about that, about just knowing who you really are, that allows you, I actually think it's very liberating to know who you are. And self-awareness is being honest about who you are, the good and the bad, the faults and everything that goes into it. And what I like to talk about with people is the fact that when you become self-aware, it provides you with opportunities to not only create the life that you want, to make changes in your life that you want to make, but it also gives you an understanding for other people. And we'll dig into more of it along the way, but the big onus that I have in my book is I want people to understand and really accept the fact that who they are at their core is not their fault. When we think about who we became or how we became who we are, our worldviews, how we think about the world, how we think about politics and religion and money and relationships and everything that's out there, it's established by the age of 14. Like it's pretty set in stone, which it makes sense. Think about somebody who is born in India, who is raised as a Muslim. There's a good chance their whole life they're going to be a Muslim. There's a good chance. And that's true of Christians. That's true of whatever you grow up in. There's something in it that is fundamentally wired in your brain, and it's really hard to move away from that, the good and the bad. And I think that's where people don't really understand and appreciate that, man, you might have some things about you that you do or that you think that you don't even understand. And the main reason is that you've never really gone on a journey of self-awareness to figure out how you got to be that way. And if you think about the stat that your worldview is established by 14, the question then is, well, who created your worldview as a person? Who did that? And for every one of us, it was most likely a parent. There are some exceptions. There might be grandparents. There might be coaches that really stepped in and played that role. But there was somebody else who influence the way that you thought about your life and about the world in general. And then as an adult, you have to figure out how to live with that. You don't get a lot of say in where you grow up, where you go to school, and what sports you're going to play, and who's going to come over your house, what movies you're going to get to watch, what music you're going to get to listen to. All of these influences that shape the way you think were determined more times than not by somebody else. But you have to learn how to live with that. And so without really understanding that, it's really hard to make certain choices to do the things that you want to do in life. One of the classics is self-sabotage. A lot of people self-sabotage when they get right to the point of success. And they do it over and over again. And that's part of my story. And there's a reason why that keeps happening, where you get really close to success and then you do something really stupid that sabotages your success. It's because there's something going on subconsciously that you don't understand. But if you did, you might make a different choice and you might not self-sabotage. Right. So there's a lot of things that happen that we just don't understand why we do them. And we often don't even like them. But we don't know how to fix them. And it's because we're not self-aware.
That's interesting. So what was the pivotal mirror moment for you where you had to look at yourself in the mirror and, really, and you were lacking maybe a little bit of self-awareness and it forced you to grow?
I mean, I think it started when I got married. I think that a good description of marriage is that it's like putting a mirror up to yourself. You start to see all your warts that you didn't see before. Mm-hmm. You start to see things that maybe you're not so proud of that you just never really caught before. I mean, imagine if you've never seen yourself in a mirror, and then someone puts it up to you. You'd see good and you'd see bad. You'd see it all. And I think that's when it started, but it's not when it fully took root. I think when it fully took root was when I got into sales. So when I got married, I was a youth pastor. I was a teacher. I was very much in kind of the giving, occupation, if you will. I loved what I did. I was a coach and all those things. But one thing that's really interesting about being a teacher or youth pastor is that if you just love on kids, you just invest into them, you teach them, you show up to their games, they love you. They think you're great. Like you're the hero of that story for a lot of these kids. And then I switched to door-to-door sales. And talk about going from hero to total bum. Total loser, like get the hell out of here.
That's the ultimate rejection.
Yeah, like it is constant rejection. And I remember I really struggled with that. I struggled with the rejection, as I think most people might in that transition. But as somebody who played college athletics, who has a personality that is easy to talk to, I love being up on stage and talking. I've always done that. I did that in high school. My mom even used to say to people, "There's never a mic that he doesn't like." I always loved being up on stage and doing stuff. So people saw that, and I think that they assumed that I was a confident person. But man, I got out there in door-to-door sales, and I literally got to the point of tears, of literally crying. I didn't want to go and do any more of it. I just totally broke down after all the rejection. And it was at that time I kind of looked in the mirror at myself and said, why am I crying about not wanting to go into a business and meeting people who I love to be around people anyways? Why is this reaction happening? And it was at that time that I started to do a little bit more digging into, hey, what's going on here? And I remember, Tyson, this thought that I had for many, many years, and I didn't think about it, but I remember it now looking back, and that is I always felt like I was getting lucky along the way. I did a lot of really great things growing up. I had some awesome experiences. I played on Little League championship teams. I was on all-star teams. I played for 2 basketball coaches that won over 900 games. My high school basketball coach won 955. My college basketball coach won 915. I got to play with these amazing coaches. I got to go to an NAIA Final Four in basketball. I got to play a national championship in golf in college. I had these moments in my story that are kind of impressive. I'm not trying to brag, but not too many people can say they played 2 college championships in 2 different sports. But yet along the way, I had this feeling I was getting lucky. It wasn't like a justifiable confidence that I'm a good basketball player or that I'm a good golfer. It was, I got lucky on the right day, or they couldn't recruit another point guard, or there was something other. There was an external reason as to why I was experiencing that success. And then when I got into door-to-door and I experienced so much rejection, it's almost just like it really showed me who I was. It exposed my flaws. And I think that the ultimate competitions in life will do that. Business will do that. College sports will do that. Door-to-door sales or competitive sales will do that. It really exposes your weaknesses. And that's when it came to light that, man, there's something wrong here. I need to dig in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you're faced with it, it's how do you respond, right? And so that kind of, we've kind of been touching on this a little bit here, but my next question is, do you think self-awareness is nature or nurture? I mean, is it kind of some of both? I mean,
yeah.
What shaped? I mean, you've kind of talked about already. What shaped your growth around that?
It's a good question. I really believe that nature has a much bigger role in who we become than nurture. I mean, think about this. If you were to take 2-month-old Trey Griggs in 1978, and put him in, the jungles of Rwanda, I'm a very different person today than I am now.
Right.
I'd be a very different person because it's a totally different experience. I think that there are probably some things that we tend to have that are genetic or natural. Like some people might say he's a natural athlete or natural singer. There's certain things I think that can be somewhat natural, but I don't think we give enough credit to how much we are influenced by our parents and by those people around us, and really who we become. There's sayings out there that make sense the more you think about it. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I mean, what does that mean? That means that you're like your parents. Why are you like your parents? It's not just genetic because we look like them. It's because in many ways we act like them. We do a lot of the things that they did, and it's because that's how we were trained. And it makes sense. When you're growing up as a kid, you're constantly being trained. Your brain is being trained in how to think, how to process, how to solve problems, whatever it is, how to survive. It's being trained that whole time. And the primary trainers are your parents. Teachers obviously have an impact, but your parents have the ultimate impact on who you become. Sure. So I think nature is less and nurture is actually more. I think I said it backwards. Nurture is more. Nature is less. Nature's more genetic. I got blue eyes because my dad had blue eyes. Okay, that happens. But I have an addictive personality, I think, because my dad has an addictive personality. They often say that if your parents are alcoholics, there's a good chance you're going to become an alcoholic. Like these things are the nurture aspect of it that I think play the biggest role. Nature is a part, but I think nurture is significantly more impactful on who we become.
Yeah, it's interesting because I get asked a lot, like, are you born with grit or are you not born with grit? And I think grit's a muscle. I think it's something that you develop, but there's steps along the way. Like we're talking about here in self-awareness. It's one of the first steps you take is, understanding who you are, where you're from, and what you want to do, and what your strengths and what your weaknesses are. So it's hard to figure out. I think it's more nurture as well, but it's like sometimes you're born into a situation, and that's nurture. So I don't know. It's hard to kind of really figure out where that starts and where that stops. But you're right. If you were born with blue eyes, you're going to have your dad had blue eyes, that type of thing.
Yeah, I don't think that you're born with grit. I really think that it's something that's modeled for you.
I agree.
Or you're put into situations that require you to make a decision. I mean, somebody grows. I mean, it's amazing. You could have two people grow up in poverty, and one of them makes the choices and gets out and becomes successful, and the other one never gets out. And they have similar experiences, but there's something along the way that probably happens. I mean, I think of Ben Carson a lot when I think of this. Like Ben Carson grew up super poor, but his mom made him do book reports every week. And he just learned a lot. He became very educated, and he started to see the world differently, got exposed to different things. And I think that obviously changes the outcomes that you have. I remember when I was a teacher, Tyson, one of my favorite days, this might be weird, one of my favorite days as a teacher was parent-teacher conferences. Because it let me understand the students that much more. I mean, if a parent came in, a lot of times I'm like, oh, that's why Zach's such a great kid. That's why Noah really struggles. I understand now. And it actually allowed me to be more empathetic and understanding of the students by talking to the parents, because it was happening. They were programming their kids. They were the reason that their kids in many ways were the way that they were. And so I think that nurture is just a massive impact on that.
It's funny you say that, because we had that recently where we went in. I apologized to my daughter for, she's more like me, and we went to this meeting, and I think they're all looking at me like, okay, now we understand, where she struggled with this. Right. Because it was like, this could have been me, a parent-teacher conference for me when I was a kid. They were talking about me, really, and so it clicked in my brain like, wow, that's pretty strong, that nature stuff, And
nature does the little things, but nurture, I think, is the big things. That's what I'll say. Like my daughters are now in the braces phase of life. And as we go and we did X-rays and whatnot, we found out that my oldest daughter was missing 3 permanent teeth. Well, guess who's missing 2 permanent teeth? This guy. Like, it's my fault. So there are things that genetically or nature that do impact that. But again, nurture to me has the biggest impact on who a person becomes, without a doubt.
I agree. All right. So this is another question that, I'm interested to hear your response on, because people answer this in a lot of different ways. But how do you balance confidence with ego? Especially in high pressure leadership type of situations, it's like, or entrepreneurial roles. How do you balance your ego and confidence? Because it gets confused a lot. I think some people confuse, arrogance with confidence, and there's a real fine line there in a lot of respects. But how do you think about that?
Yeah, some of these words can be interchanged, especially arrogance and ego getting in the way. I think we think of it like that. Right. Confidence to me is the product of doing the right things over and over again. Right. And it creates what we call justifiable confidence. But I think the more self-aware that you become, the more you realize your place in the world. You realize I can do a lot of good, and I can be a force for good, but I also have the capacity to be a real jerk, to be a real pain.
Sure.
And I think when you have the attitude that you want to help people, when you want other people to have a great experience or to do those types of things, I think it almost forces you to flip on the confidence switch more than the ego switch. When you want people to think great things about you and to help you, that's when the ego switch comes on. And so I think it's an attitude of having true humility and what I call justifiable confidence. One of the best definitions I've ever heard for humility is that humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. It's thinking of other people more. So I can be a confident person. I can do the right things. I know there's certain things I can do, but I can do it in a way that makes it a positive experience for other people more than something where I'm seeking out attention to try to raise my status. And you see that throughout history. You see some people who you can tell they're really in it for themselves. And people will say you're egotistical, you're arrogant, because that comes across like you're in this for you, not for me. Somebody who is helping other people, somebody who's thinking less of themselves but still doing a great job, we would say that person is confident. They're sure. It's a better word. So I think a lot of it has to do with your heart. A lot of it has to do with your motives and what you're trying to accomplish. It's very hard in history to find somebody who was truly seeking to help other people who had a massive ego. Let me give you one example that I think is very clear. I think it's Tim Tebow. I mean, if there's anybody that has the right to be arrogant or have ego, it's Tim Tebow. I mean, the guy won national championships and Heisman Awards in college football. He won a college or an NFL playoff game on a last-minute drive on an overtime pass against the Steelers. He had success in many things. He went and tried to play baseball. There's not too many people that could even get to some of the places that he got in his career. Even though he wasn't like a great, he made it, and he did some really great things. And he could have taken that and he could have done whatever he wanted to do. He could have created a brand. He could have done all kinds of things for himself. But instead, he took the resources that he earned and the status that he has, and now he is out rescuing children from sex trafficking. Nobody says Tim Tebow has an ego or that he's arrogant, even though the guy is super confident. If you've ever heard him speak, he doesn't mince words. He's super confident in what he believes and what he knows and how he's going to live. But nobody says he's arrogant or that he has ego. And I think a big part of it is that he is in it solely to help other people. He was a great teammate for that reason. He wanted other people to succeed. He was always lifting up his teammates and taking the blame himself when things went wrong. He was a phenomenal teammate. He was a winner in the locker room. Say what you want about his career and his throwing motion. There's plenty of debate about that.
Right.
But the guy's a winner. And he lifts his teammates up, and now he's rescuing children. He's getting in front of Congress to lobby for resources to rescue children from sex trafficking. He's an incredibly confident guy. But man, the ego is off to the side. I think a lot of it has to do with your heart and what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to help people, it's hard to be egotistical and arrogant. If you're trying to help yourself, it comes out naturally.
Yeah, I love that distinction, because you kind of, when you have a big ego, it's clear, right? It's about you and all that kind of stuff. But when you are doing stuff for other people, it almost washes out anytime you are somewhat, could be termed egotistical, right? Like you're putting yourself out there, you're putting yourself in these positions. But if you're doing it for other people, if you're getting attention, as a byproduct of that, it's not an egotistical. They're not looked at as being egotistical, right? It kind of
comes across very different. Very different. And people can detect that. They can detect when somebody's in it for themselves, and they can detect it when somebody's, trying to help other people out. And I think it's important to really think about, what is your motive here? What are you trying to accomplish here? Are you just wanting to build things for yourself, or are you really wanting to help other people? And I personally like being around the people that want to help other people.
Yeah, and I think people can sniff that out. I think that's exactly it. It's just what your motive is, and how that's coming across. What about this is another thing. We've kind of touched on this stuff already, but like blind spots. Have you discovered them in yourself and in your personal, professional life, and how do you uncover those? It's kind of a little bit off of my first question, but really trying to look around and find out where you aren't seeing something about yourself or the situation or whatever that is. I mean, how do you uncover that type of thought?
I think it's a two-step process. The first is you got to be willing to get in the game and do something, and maybe try something new, maybe just whatever. You got to do something to find out if you're good at it, if you like it, if you're not. But I think the second part of that is you need really great people around you who will be honest with you and who really care about you, who will be willing to say, hey, this isn't you. I've been going through a journey of the last 4 years of being an entrepreneur. I started my company in 2022 and built it up to 7 people, a little marketing agency, and did that. Turns out, guess what? I stink at managing people. Like, I'm no good. And I tried a couple of different things in my business, like the offerings that we gave, and I had people in my life who said, I don't know that I believe this version of Trey. Mm-hmm. Man, like, that's hard to hear a little bit, but it's also like, thank you. Because I don't know that I really believed it either. I was hoping that maybe somebody else believed it. But when they say, I don't know that I believe this version of Trey, then I go, I don't think I believe it either. Let's make a pivot. And I've been very quick to pivot in my business when I felt like it was the right time to do so. So I think 2 things: got to be willing to get in the game and do something. Don't have that paralysis to not move or to not try or to not take a risk. But then 2, having really great people around you when you do it will accelerate that process of figuring out your blind spots of where you're really strong and where you're really weak. I'm terrible at managing people. I don't have a lot of empathy for people when I'm managing them, which I thought that I would because I love coaching. But what I found was that when it's my business and my money, it's a lot harder to be empathetic towards somebody. And that was something I didn't foresee in my business. But once I realized, man, I don't like managing people. I'm not good at managing people. People don't like being managed by me. All those things kind of came together, and I started to recognize that as a blind spot. It's like, okay, well, then we need to I either need to get better at this and learn, or I need to stop doing it. One of the 2 has to happen. But I don't think you can really find a blind spot until you're in the game, doing something, especially something new, but doing something, and having great people around you who are willing to say, I don't believe that about you. I don't think this is actually you. And showing you that. But you have to have those people in your life. Without that, it's going to be very, very difficult to find your blind spots. You're probably going to believe things about yourself that aren't true. You're probably going to try things that maybe you shouldn't do because other people have told you should, or you watch someone else trying to mimic them. Having those 2 factors, I think, helps you find your blind spots pretty quick.
Absolutely. I love that answer. And, part of it's being coachable, right? I think being able to take, criticism from people that are close to you, or not even criticism, but just hearing something you don't want to hear. Sometimes we see ourselves a certain way, and it takes somebody else to kind of really be like, you're so much better at some of these other things, than what you're doing. And managing people's tough, man. It's tough. I was having a conversation around it today, and we share this, and we're very empathetic people, and that can go one of 2 ways, and both of them are hard to deal with when you're managing people. You can be too empathetic or not empathetic enough, and it's like, where is that middle ground where you can still be empathetic but still be pushing people to get to where they need to get to in a way in which you're not beating them down and all that type of stuff. So
I don't think there's enough management around, or enough training around management in general in business. But I also think that you have to have people around you that have similar values, who want the best for you, who are willing to say, I don't believe that about you. You know what I mean? I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, and sometimes you want to level up to management, and you don't really know what that is until you get there, and you realize what comes along with it, and then you're like, oh shoot, I'm not really good at managing people, so to speak. Maybe managing projects and all this other stuff, but so it can be a real challenge for people to come to terms with and understand that that's okay. There's other paths in which you can go. So, kind of off that note, what about, are there any tools, mentors, or your kind of daily practices that you rely on to kind of stay grounded in self-awareness?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I spend a lot of time going to counseling, and I advise everybody to do this. And here's why. I think that this is something everybody should really take seriously, is going on a journey of self-awareness to figure out who they are at their core, and understanding how they got to be that way. And it's hard to do that by yourself. It's very difficult to do that by yourself. Having a counselor who can ask the right questions, who can dig a little bit, who can listen objectively, who are trained to say, hey, this is the pattern that I'm seeing in your life. Let me ask you another question. Let me follow it up. It really helped me out. Like, I remember when I was going to counseling, and I was just trying to explain to him, like, man, I'm not sure what's wrong with me, but I was kind of told him the situation, especially on door to door, and counselors started asking questions, and it was probably, I'm going to say the 5th or 6th session. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but I remember like a demeanor changed on his face, and he goes, I know what happened to you. And he asked a few more questions, and then he wanted to validate thinking. And it was him saying, your whole childhood, you were told that anything that good happened to you was not because of you. And you were told that anything that bad happened to you was your fault. And it completely destroyed your confidence in yourself, your view of yourself. And it's really important. Like Donald Miller says, the most important conversations that we have are the ones we have with ourselves. And what we say to ourselves is really, really valuable. And so it's learning how to talk to yourself differently. Let me give you a silly modern example for me. All right, I love playing golf. Played in college, had a good run. I'm a decent player, but my driver historically has not been great. In fact, a couple months ago, I would have just told you flat out, I'm a bad driver of the golf ball. But you know what? I've changed. And so now I'm having different conversations with myself. I'm literally telling myself, especially on the golf course, man, you're a great driver of the golf ball. I'm just literally saying that to myself. I'm telling other people that. I'm saying, yeah, I'm a great driver of the golf ball. It's my best club in the bag. Now, that is not true. If you watch me play a game, it is not true. If you watch me play golf, my driver's still a little challenging. But I'm trying to rewire the way that I think about myself as a driver of the golf ball. That's an important conversation to have if I ever want to get over it. I'm never going to get better hitting a driver by telling myself that I suck. And that's what we tend to do. We tend to just pile on to ourselves. We tend to reinforce a lot of those negative things. And when I was in counseling, one of the skills that my counselor taught me was how to change the thoughts in my mind in the moment. There are mornings still, Tyson, where I wake up, man, I feel overwhelmed. Like, I can't keep up with these clients, or nobody's going to buy this book, or nobody's going to sign up for the golf tournament, or just whatever it is. Like, you just feel like you're not good enough, or you're not going to make it. And he taught me to go in front of the mirror. Now, this sounds cheesy and kind of weird, but it works. He taught me to go in front of the mirror and look myself in the eyes, not look away, like literally look myself in the eyes and say, hey, you got this today. You got it. Just go work. You're going to knock this out. You got this. Like, just that kind of talk. And then walk away and immediately start working. That's the skill that he taught me. Whenever I just feel that overwhelming, I can't handle this, I'm not going to be able to do this or whatever, I go in front of the mirror and I tell myself, you got this, you can totally handle this. And then I go start working. And what I found is that the feeling that I have goes away eventually. It eventually subsides. And the lesson he taught me was, it's a lot easier to act your way into a feeling than to feel your way into an action.
I love that.
You just have to start acting, and the feelings will change.
Yeah.
And so talking to myself differently and starting action on doing something, if that's going and working out, if that's getting to work, answering emails, whatever it is, just start working. Tell yourself that, go start working, and literally that feeling of being overwhelmed will subside. It'll go away, and I'll be able to handle it, and I'll keep working and moving forward. And it's just little skills like that I was taught along the way that have really helped me out. For every person and whatever they're dealing with, there are skills that will help you get through those moments, whatever they are. Skills and boundaries that you can put in place to help you out. One of those other ones for me, Tyson, is I grew up in a family. I grew up with my dad. My parents divorced when I was 7, but I grew up in a family where women were not viewed with high regard or respect. My dad struggled with relationships with women. I mean, I saw him kind of date around a little bit, not date around. And I remember, Tyson, I remember this specifically. When he came home and he said, I'm done with women, I don't need them. I remember him saying that. And it's almost like this idea of like women are disposable. You know, like they're not necessary. And when you're a young kid, when you're 10, 11, 12, statements like that, it's like a core memory, when you think about the movie Inside Out, it's a core memory of like how I should view women. And it caused that along with just some other experiences caused me to have a not very good view of women growing up. It wasn't by choice, but it's what I had. And so now as an adult, I'm having to learn how to change the way that I view women, because that wiring, man, it's like they say that an alcoholic is always an alcoholic. You don't get rid of the wiring. It's still there. Right. You have to figure out how to kind of rewire, to short circuit, come up with a new path for the wiring to get there in order to change the way that you think and to change the way you act about certain things. And so like there's those little skills that my counselor shared with me that I thought was really important. And the other one I already mentioned is, you just have to have people around you who know that about you, that you're willing to share that about yourself, who then are willing to help you get through it or call you out when you're not quite following through on that. And again, it goes back to having a good tribe around you, having good people around you, and being willing to be vulnerable. If you never tell anybody the things you struggle with, they can't help you.
Right.
They can't help you. So I try to be very transparent with people about where my struggles are without laying all the dirty laundry out on the grid. We don't have to do that. But I try to be really transparent about where my struggles are. I mean, if you take me to a conference, for example, and put me at a bar, no problem. I never am tempted to drink. It's not an issue. But you put me alone with really beautiful women, that's more of a challenge. And I need guys around me who are going to help me stay on track with that. Like that's just my issue. I've got to deal with. I've got to work through that over and over. And we all have those things, but if we don't know about them and we're not willing to share them with other people, and we don't have people who want to help us, then we can get in a knot pretty quick. Yeah.
There's some gems there. I mean, number one, therapy, and counseling, I think, I'm happy to say has changed the perception of it over time. And I feel like guys like you and me have to lead that charge, show that it is masculine and, that it's part of masculinity, and, it's okay to talk about things and figure out, what your faults are and stuff like that you wouldn't necessarily maybe feel free to talk about to other people about. And then it begins to rewire your brain. You begin that journey of rewiring your brain. And that doesn't happen overnight. I'm sure it didn't happen for you overnight, but you start taking those little steps and you start recognizing these things in your life. That's all a part of self-awareness, and then establishing that confidence that you can become gritty with, right? And I love that you talked about that. And especially, I remember as a kid being told that like the sum of, you're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with. And I hated that because I love the 5 people I hung out with and the trouble we got into and all that shit. But also now I look back and I'm like, you're right. It was like we were almost worse for each other together than we were individually. And so as you
100%.
Right?
Yeah, you talk yourself into things you would never do because everybody's doing it or whatever. Yeah, 100%.
Right. So, as I got older, I began to understand that, and I flipped that. And now it's, the people that are around me, or the people that do hold me accountable, are the people that I can be vulnerable with, that I can be, open, and I can receive their kind of, not criticism, but their, coaching or whatever, and it doesn't become like they're coming at me, right? So you need to have that tribe around you. So I guess what I'm saying is sometimes you start young doing what you think that tribe is like, but as you get older, you need to make sure that tribe is tighter and better, suited for the type of person you want to be.
We know what's interesting about that, Tyson, is I look back on my life and I see areas where the people around me had the biggest influence on my life in a very positive way. When I was in high school, I was that kid that was popular because of sports, like people knew who I was, but I was not like cool to where people invited me to parties. You know what I mean? Right. And my 2 best friends back in the day, Marty O'Dwyer and Brad, who these 2 guys, I mean, we were like 3 peas in a pod. We would go and play tennis at the local park until the lights went out on Friday and Saturday nights. That's what we did. We loved to do that. Occasionally we would go TP people just because that was kind of fun. That's like the most mischievous thing that we did. We never went to parties. We never drank. We never did drugs. I still have never seen marijuana in person to this day. I've smelled it. When I became a high school teacher, I've never seen marijuana in person. It's just the people I've been around.
I was waiting for like you've never seen cocaine or heroin.
No, I've never seen this. I've never seen that either. But I've never seen marijuana in person. And so growing up in high school, I had these 2 friends. We would just we would just play sports together all the time. That's all we did. We didn't drink, we didn't party, nothing. We go to Best Buy and buy a new CD and drive around and listen to it. Like, this is what we did. And then I go to college, and my two best friends in college, Shane Weaver and JD Gravina. JD Gravina is now the head women's basketball coach at Western Illinois. He was in my wedding. Shane Weaver is an executive at an insurance company in Cincinnati. None of us were in fraternities. We were independent. We didn't drink. None of us drank in college. In fact, they didn't start drinking until they were 21, and they decided to drink, and I became the driver. But I had these amazing influences in my life, these really close friends that I look back on my life thinking, here I have divorced parents. My dad's an alcoholic. The odds are not in my favor, you know. In fact, they're very much in my favor to become an alcoholic and to struggle. And I really give a lot of credit to the friends that I had back then, the people that I spent most of my time with, because all we wanted to do was play ping pong in the basement of the dorm and, go shoot baskets and just compete and do these kind of things. And I'm so thankful for that now, because it really is true. Who you hang out with very much dictates who you are and who you become. And I'm really thankful for that looking back on it. And it's important now. It's like, who do you put around you in your life? Who are you surrounding yourself with? Who is having the greatest influence on your life? And who are you influencing as well? I often find that when you get 5 really great people around you, they're excited to have you around them as well. And you lift them up as well. So there's a lot to be said about that, about finding your tribe, finding your group, and that having a big impact on overcoming some of the issues that you deal with. But again, it goes back to, like, you got to know what those issues are. You got to be willing to share them, and you have to have people around you who want you to get better, who will hold you accountable in order to do that. That's the secret formula to really overcoming a lot of the things that we got from our parents growing up that we didn't even want.
You got to be real with yourself, right? You got to, be aware of your, genetics and, what you're predisposed to and your environment and, some of that stuff. And if you're not real with it and you're not like, hey, this is heavy stuff, I need to do something to change this, or even just find the vice, like, competition is a drug too. I mean,
it can be. Yeah.
It can be, right? Like,
yeah, 100%.
You're wanting, everything you do, once you kind of, I'm a very competitive person. I've got it under control now, but every time I find, that's what juices me up, right? So I get more reaction out of, competition than anything. If it's not competitive, then I'm not really that interested in it.
Right. Yeah, when I'm on the golf course, I'm playing for lunch or $1 hole or something.
Right. It doesn't have to be for large stakes.
Yeah,
it really doesn't.
Yeah.
But that can be, and you channel yourself into something like that, and you become self-aware of the fact that, that is what drives you and what you enjoy spending your time doing, and you're not focused. You're not pulled away from that. So. Yeah, that's really important. What about mentors? Did you have many mentors, kind of during this time?
I did, and I have to say it wasn't, I'm so thankful again for that, because it wasn't me reaching out to them saying, hey, be my mentor. It was people that just, saw an opportunity and really helped out. I mean, I could go really far back. In fact, I had great Little League coaches. My dad was one of them, but I had a lot of other coaches that just really believed in me. I had incredible teachers and coaches in high school. My high school basketball coach really became like a father figure when I struggled with my dad. When we kind of went through that tough time, he stepped in. And I remember one Friday night I blew out my shoe in a basketball game. And he knew we didn't have any money. So literally at the end of the game, we get back to the high school. Everybody's waiting for their ride. And he just comes up to me very quietly and he says, hey, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. We'll get you some shoes. And he came to my house. He picked me up. Bought some shoes, kept me going. Little things like that. Came over to my house one morning when my car wouldn't start to try to figure it out. And then when we couldn't get started, he took me to school and let him know, hey, I was over there trying to help him out. Couldn't get his car started. Just really just invested in me and just poured into me. It's phenomenal. My high school golf coach and physics teacher, same way. Neil Ellis, just incredible person. In college, my basketball coach was just phenomenal. My golf coach in college, also phenomenal people that just poured into us and did that. But I'll tell you the one that made the biggest impact on me is a gentleman in Kansas City named Keith Gibson. So I'll tell you this story real quick. I'm 23 years old, okay? 24 actually. And I had just moved back to Kansas City from Oregon. And I just kind of figured out my life. I figured out I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. Because it's what I originally went to school for, and then I made some, 19-year-old decisions and didn't do it. But I realized that's what I wanted to do. But I was also at a place, Tyson, where I grew up in church. and knew a lot about God, knew a lot about the Bible. But I'd reached a place in my life where I'm like, listen, if this is all not real, I'm done. I'm not going to waste my time. Like, it doesn't make sense, If Jesus isn't who he says he is, there's no reason, there's no point. And I remember I came back and I said to him, I said, hey, I'd like to learn a little bit. I want to know. I want to study. And this guy, man, just a phenomenal guy. He's about 10 years older than me. He was a pastor in my mom's church. He came and had lunch with me every week when I was a teacher. Sometimes we talk life. Sometimes we dig into the Bible. Sometimes we learn about other religions. Because I was like, man, I want to know. I want to know, where do these religions come from, and what's real, and what can be believed, and what can be proved, and I wanted to know all of it. And this guy, man, just poured into me, just loved on me, was just there, and it was a critical time in my life. And he was really, really important in that time. He married my wife and I. He's still somebody I consider a dear friend. He's also a big Chiefs fan, so of course that's great. But I mean, he was a big mentor of mine, and he didn't have to do that. Like he didn't make $1 off of that. Nobody really knew about it. We just had a standing lunch appointment at a Chinese restaurant right by the high school every Wednesday, and we did that for 3 years. And it was when I was buying my first house, and when I was dating and about to get married, and just all these like big moments in life. And my dad was almost on his deathbed. He passed away 3 months after my wife and I got married. So all these things were happening at the same time, and you need that kind of stable, rock in your life, that figure in your life. And Keith did that, and he was just tremendous. And I don't get to talk to him as much anymore, but man, like I look back on that time just so thankful for him. And there have been others since then that I've had the chance to work with, people in our industry that I've really looked up to and have been mentors for me in business. So it's so powerful to have that person. I think that every person should have the focus of always having a mentor and always being a mentee. Like, you're always getting from somebody who has what you want, or the experiences or the knowledge or the wisdom, but giving to somebody who needs it as well. I'm very, like, I'm as we talk today, I'm very thankful that every Tuesday morning I've got a group of guys that I go and I meet with, and we talk life, and we talk spiritual things, and we, it's like, it's such a blessing to be on that end of it as well, and to receive so much from so many people over the years. So, thanks for asking that.
I love that, because when you're a mentee too, you also got to be open. You got to be open to being self-aware in what you're receiving from your mentors and whatnot. But it's just amazing, the whole mentor thing, where these people come into your life for seasons, right, and they just can change the trajectory of your life, right, forever. And I've had them in my life along the way too, and it's just, I look back on it, and you're right. You think about what you accomplished on that one Wednesday of every week for 3 years, right? It's a small portion of your overall story, but you became, a man during that time, and learning how to deal with a lot of this stuff, and having somebody to kind of teach you and walk you through that, and you self-aware enough to be like, I want to know, and I don't know, so teach me. It's important.
Yeah.
What about we've been kind of talking about this, but I kind of understand, your question, or what you're going to answer this with. But do you think someone can be gritty and ambitious without being self-aware?
I do, just because maybe they've been trained to be that way. I think that they'll be limited, though, by not being self-aware. I mean, I think you can grow up in a house where maybe that your mom or dad are gritty, and they've really taught you to be that way. Just like, don't take no for an answer, don't give up. Right. Like, I think they can be taught that. But I also think that with anything in life, there's potential roadblocks that could be good or bad in that regard that can get in the way. So I think you're always limited by not being self-aware. I say this in the book. This is one of my big things that I say, one of my keynotes in the book is, I don't believe that you can really build the life that you want until you truly understand the past that you've lived. I think you have to really dig in and know not only what was I given as a child. I think it's important to understand what your parents had growing up as well. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you a quick story. When my dad took credit for all of the good things I did, that was the kind of the onus of this. He took credit for all the things that I did well. If I shot the ball well in the basketball game, he's like, man, I'm glad. I bet you're glad I worked on your shot or helped you do this. So it's like, always came back to him. Glad I threw you some BP, and it was always like it's like he needed validation. I never understood that. Like, you're a grown man and you're stealing this from me. It didn't make sense. But the more I started to understand my dad's childhood, the more it all made sense. My dad, when he was 13, oldest of 5, when he was 13, his father, my grandpa, was committed to a military mental institution by my grandma, his mom, who couldn't put up with it anymore. He was a World War II veteran, discharged from the military during the beginning stages of World War II, and just had a bunch of issues and tried to work through it for 13 years. Ended up having 5 kids. My dad was the first. And so my dad's 13. His dad, 1958, is put in a military mental institution in Leavenworth, Kansas, where he lived out the remaining 27 years of his life, passed away in 1985. The one person who could believe in my dad and really validate him as a man was gone.
Right.
And in place of that, he had to work. And there weren't a lot of benefits back then. He had to work. He threw newspapers in the morning. He sat groceries after school. He didn't get to play sports in school anymore. He was bitter towards his mom for many, many years for that very decision, for taking his dad away from him. And I really believe it's the reason why he had the view of women that he had, because of the way he felt about his mom. And so when you really understand that, it allowed me to forgive my dad and say, you know what, he didn't do that intentionally. He wasn't trying to hurt me. And I really believe this. Parents aren't out there to try to make their kids miserable or to ruin their lives. That's not what they're trying to do. But sometimes they do it because of the things that they're dealing with and the flaws that they have. And for my dad, he wasn't validated as a young man. He wasn't validated that he was good enough, that he had what it took. And when he had me, his only son, it's like he used that to get the validation that he was seeking. And in the meantime, he took what was rightfully mine away. Sure. And it wasn't malicious. Right. I mean, my dad did so many things for me. I got to tell you a quick story. My freshman year of high school, my dad's rule, by the way, because he was a single dad, was that I had to play sport every season because he didn't. There was no babysitting. There was no child care. Like, you're playing sports, and I'll pick you up from school, and we'll go home, or you'll walk home, or whatever. So I had to play a sport every season. Well, I was really, really small, and I was 4'10" my freshman year going in, 92 pounds. Wasn't playing football. I didn't have the skills to play soccer. The only other sport available was cross country. So I ran cross country. Well, I'm a decent athlete. I'm competitive. We had a guy get injured, and I was able to take his spot, and I ended up keeping his spot for the last 2 races of the year. Well, the rule is if you run varsity in the district race, you get a letter. So even though I started the year on the freshman squad and did mostly JV running, I ran 2 races at the end of the year. I ran the conference race, and I ran the district race in varsity, and I got a letter. So if right out of the gate, freshman year, I get a varsity letter. Very cool. Not a lot of kids do that. There's not a lot of freshmen on the varsity football team, varsity soccer team, varsity. There aren't many. There was probably maybe 3 of us that got a letter freshman year right out the gate. And my dad went to his good friend Vic, who was also our barber, his friend from high school. He's known him for years. And he's like, Vic, man, I really want to get Trey a Letterman jacket. I can't afford it. Can I borrow some money? I'll pay you back. When we come back for cuts, I'll pay you back over the next 3 months. Well, Vic said, absolutely. Gave him the money, right? So my dad, without telling me, he goes and he gets a letter jacket with my name on the back and the year and the letter stitched on and everything. And he brings it to me at freshman basketball tryouts. He brings it to me.
Wow.
Like, talk about a boss move.
Right.
I mean, this is all freshmen. None of us have a Letterman's jacket. And my dad walks into practice and says, hey, son, here you go. Like, what a cool move.
Wow.
And I put that jacket off and never felt so good. I'd like to have that. It's like, I know my dad cared about me. I know he loved me. I mean, think about this. My dad came home every day after driving a truck, a city truck, local truck, box truck, 18, 20-foot truck. Every day he came home and he made me a warm meal. He never missed. He made me a warm meal every night from home. How many single dads do that?
Right.
Like, there's a lot of things that my dad did really, really well. Sometimes you don't see those in kind of the fog of everything. But when I started to really understand my dad's life and his childhood and what he experienced, that's when I was able to forgive him, number one, and have massive empathy for him. Number two, I felt bad for my dad. That he didn't get that he lost out on that, and that he felt that he needed to be validated, and he didn't know how to handle it. He didn't know what to do. So he did what made sense to him. He stole the glory, essentially, from my childhood success. And again, I think that's how parents are. I think parents, we love our kids. We want them to have a great life. We want them to be set up for success. But there's probably something that we are all doing to our kids that they're going to have to deal with later in life. from some inefficiency that we have or some flaw that we have.
Security or something.
Exactly. Like they're going to have that. And that's why I say everybody needs to go on a journey of self-awareness, because every one of us was raised by imperfect humans that did something intentionally or unintentionally that has messed us up. And we have to work through that. We have to really figure that out and work through what that is. Sometimes they're more acceptable things in culture, and sometimes they're not. You know, like being a little bossy. That's a little more acceptable than being an alcoholic. Right. But they're both problems that we generally get from our parents. And if we don't take the time to figure it out, then we can't have that forgiveness. We can't have that empathy towards the people that hurt us. And we can't have a lot of empathy for other people. You know, Tyson, this is something I think about a lot. If somebody just does me wrong, and it happens. People do it. I mean, it happens. We're all going to be wrong in life. But if somebody does me wrong, it's easier now to say, man, I wonder what's going on with them. I wonder what's going on in their brain. I wonder why they would do that. That's not a good move for them. I wonder why they would do that. And have a little bit more empathy. Doesn't mean you roll over and let people take advantage of you, but it means that you can forgive faster. You can have empathy and little understanding a little bit faster, because we're all going through something, man. We're all going through something.
You bet.
And when you become self-aware, you're able to, I think, work on it in ways that you can't if you don't.
I couldn't agree with you more. And once you kind of change your perspective, and that narrative in your head of, as you get older, you start, you have more empathy for your folks, and you kind of understand that they were just doing the best that they had with what they were given, right? And you think about it too. Even back in that time, there wasn't a lot of other ways to change that mindset. Now there's podcasts like this. There's other resources that you can kind of look at and see that, okay, maybe I can change. I can generationally break this curse of doing some of this stuff and keep passing it down. So being self-aware enough to go on that journey to kind of just get the appropriate perspective and realize everybody's doing the best that they can. We all are fighting battles that no one knows about, and it's just how you interpret that and the grace you're willing to give, not only to yourself but also to your parents and so on and so forth. And I love that story, because I think it's so relevant to understanding, getting to the core of who you are and why you are. And sometimes it's not your fault, but that doesn't mean that you resign to that fate forever.
Too many people say it's just the way I am.
Right.
which is the personal equivalent of the business excuse, we've always done it that way.
You bet. Absolutely.
It's the same thing. It's just the way I am. Like, deal with it. No, that's doesn't have to be the way that you are. You can change. You can do something different. But again, if you're not willing to find out what that is or to work through it, it's pretty much impossible. The second half of my book, I talk about how this really impacts a lot of relationships. A lot of relationships. Tyson, I think about this as a parent and how I interact with my kids. Most people parent the way that their parents parented them, whether they like it or not. They often do that. And they either do that or they do the complete opposite because they didn't like it. Maybe they might do the opposite. But here's the challenge of that is when you're married, your spouse has her own wiring from growing up that's different than yours.
Right.
And so when you're trying to parent and you have different worldviews on things, even if it's small, it makes a big difference. I remember my mentor Keith told me this one time, and I'll never forget this. When he got married, after the honeymoon, they came home and they move in together and they're starting to live together. And one day he goes to make a sandwich and he's looking for the peanut butter. He gets the jelly and then he gets the bread and he's looking for the peanut butter. And he's like, I know we have peanut butter. I bought it. And he's looking he's looking everywhere. He's trying to find it. All the cabinets. He finally goes to his wife and he says, hey, have you seen the peanut butter? And she goes, yeah, it's in the fridge. And he goes, it's in the fridge. She goes, yeah. Why is it in the fridge? Well, that's where you put it after you open it. No, you don't. You don't put peanut butter in the fridge. It gets cold. You can't spread it. He goes, but it's going to go. Like, they grew up in different houses that put peanut butter in a different place. Yep. And it caused a little argument. Kind of a funny one now.
That's a great metaphor for it.
It really is. Though. It's like I grew up thinking peanut butter is in the cupboard, and you grew up thinking peanut butter is in the fridge, and like that's wrong. And now how are we going to live? How are we going to figure this out? And that's a small microcosm of an entire marriage and an entire 18 years of parenting. My wife and I went through this. My kids have learned that I'm the yes parent, which is a problem. Right?
Parents, must be a girl dad thing.
Maybe it's a girl dad thing. I don't know if it'd be any different with boys. So I'll be honest. I'll tell you why.
True. Yeah,
I'll tell you why. But they've learned that I'm a yes parent. When they learn that early on, they know who to go to. They start asking only you. Or if they don't get the right answer that they want from mom, they come to you, right? And that causes a lot of problems. And I remember, for Tammy and I, we were probably 8 to 10 years into parenting at this point, and she was getting really frustrated that I was saying yes to everything, and I was getting frustrated.
You were the hero. You were the.
Well, I mean, I guess yes, but I was getting frustrated that she was saying no. And having to deal with that, because like that's pretty miserable for kids when they hear no. And I remember one time, I can't remember if she asked me or if I asked her. Something led to it where one of us asked the other, "Why do you always say whatever, yes or no?" And I remember thinking, I don't know why I say yes all the time. I had to really think through that, And she had to think through, why does she say no all the time? Tyson, it told me back to being a kid. Mm-hmm. My parents divorced when I was 7. I lived with my dad from 7 on. Where was he all day, especially in the summer? He was working. So if my friend called and said, "Hey, do you want to come over?" It wasn't a, "Hey, Dad, can I go over to Johnny's house?" It was, "How do I get there? Like, am I going to ride my bike, or is Mom going to pick me up? Am I running?" Like, it wasn't a yes or no. It was a how. Right. Everything in my childhood was a how. How are you going to do it? Is it possible? Can you do it? Can I go swimming and get back in time to take a nap for the game tonight? Can I like it was just a big problem to solve. It was never yes or no. It was how. That was my entire childhood. No joke. Right. So when my kids ask to do something, my natural response is how? Yeah, how can we make that happen? Yeah, I'm sure it's fine. How can we make that happen? Right? Mm-hmm. My wife grew up in a different scenario where they didn't have a lot of money, and Mom was young, 3 kids under 5, chaos. Probably real easy for her mom to say no a lot. It's probably easy. They didn't have a lot of money. Didn't just whatever. No is just an easy answer. So my wife grew up hearing no more than yes. So that's her default. And so, now that she knows that, and now that I know that, we're able to work on it. One, like I'm able to say, okay, let's look at the calendar. Let's ask some questions first before we say yes. And she's able to, not say no right away. Maybe ask some questions and figure it out. And we're working really hard on that. And she has permission now for me to say, hey, listen, the calendar's getting a little full. I feel like we're saying yes to a few too many things. Can we talk about some things before you say yes moving forward? Like now it's not something where she's really mad at me about. It's something she's trying to help me with. And I have the permission to do the same thing with her. Say, hey, I'm hearing a lot of no. I know you said you didn't want to be, just saying no all the time. I'm just letting you know I'm hearing that. That's it. And then she can work on it. So we're more partners now. But that partnership didn't come until we really understood who we were and why we were that way. And that's a small example to do that. 100%. It happens in financial decision making. It happens, in marriage. It happens in business, partnerships, leadership. There's so many areas in which being self-aware allows you to make the right choices and to live a better life. Whereas not being self-aware often causes conflict and problems that just continue to happen without you even understanding why they continue to happen. And so I read about that in the second half of the book. Like, it's not just you becoming self-aware, it's all the benefits you get in relationships from being self-aware.
I love that. It really was exactly what my next question was going to be, about how it shows up and how, in your life and in leadership and how it's changed your relationships. But,
doggone it, I jumped the gun. My bad.
Well, no, it's just natural, man. I just really feel like, a lot of this stuff kind of goes together. So, it flows in out the other. But I think the important thing now is, after all of this self-discovery, thinking about stuff, if you could go back and talk to your younger self, what's one piece of advice you'd give that young Trey about self-awareness, and what would it be?
Yeah, I think what I would tell myself, especially just knowing my story, I would tell myself that the most important thing is to learn how to believe in yourself. Like, that's the most important thing, is to learn how to believe in yourself. And I do believe it's a skill to learn how to believe in yourself. Some parents gift that to their kids, and it's a beautiful thing. Some parents don't. But no matter what, you can learn to believe in yourself. You do the right things long enough, you get confidence, you give yourself credit. This is the biggest thing, is I never could give myself credit for the work that I actually was doing. I was a gym rat, Tyson. I was in the gym shooting all the time. I was just in there all the time shooting because it was my favorite place to be. Or on the driving range, hitting balls, my favorite place to be. But when people would say, hey, you're a great shooter, or something like that, it was so hard just to give myself credit that, yeah, I am a great shooter, like justifiably confident, not bragging. Yeah, I should be a great shooter. I was in the gym for hours, this week. Or, yeah, I should be able to hit a golf ball. I've hit hundreds of thousands of them in my life. But that was a real problem. I never learned how to believe in myself. Mm-hmm. I have a dear friend. His name is Jared Wolf. He's played on the PGA Tour. He had 1 year on the PGA Tour. He spent most of his years on mini tours, Corn Ferry Tour, and he's a dear friend of mine. And I'll never forget a story that he tells. He told it on a podcast that I had him on of mine. When he was young, and he was getting good at golf, like probably 12, 13 years old, he remembers a story of his dad calling around looking for a net and a mat so that Jared could practice in the backyard. And when his dad was making those phone calls, his dad was saying things like, I'm looking for a net and a mat that my son can use in the backyard. He's going to play on the PGA Tour someday. I want him to practice at home. He's going to play on the PGA Tour someday. Heard that over and over. And guess what? He played on the PGA Tour. And he has a level of belief that I still envy. I still can't believe how much he believes in his ability. It's a thing of beauty that his dad gave him. But it's something that we can all learn. We just have to have better conversations with ourselves. So I would definitely tell my younger self, learn to believe in yourself. Because that's the beginning, I think, of all good things, is the belief. It's the vision. You have to have a vision that you can do something. You have to have a belief that you can do something before you actually do it. Belief comes before action. You got to believe it and then you act on it. And so for me specifically, I would tell myself to whatever you have to do, whatever you have to read, whoever you have to talk to, learn how to believe in yourself.
I couldn't agree more. I love it, and it's a good way to kind of to wrap it up a little bit here, because it all starts about what we were talking about at the beginning about rewiring your brain and kind of having that conversation and that positive self-talk and all that stuff, and how that manifests into actual results. And until you start doing a lot of that stuff, you're going to run into a lot of roadblocks in life, and you're going to start blaming other people and all that type of stuff. But if you can have the self-awareness to, kind of see yourself as making progress and having small wins and giving yourself credit for those small wins and not just saying you were lucky, that it came from hard work. And, those are the important parts of developing confidence, which in turn turns to grittiness, and it all goes back to being self-aware. So, man, Trey, I love this conversation. We talk all day. We'll probably go on for another couple hours like on our normal calls, but we'll keep it short for the audience. If you stuck with us that long, I think you've heard a lot, and a lot of gems there, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And hopefully we can talk more about this again sometime once the book comes out.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. It's just a blast to get to do stuff with you and to be a part of what you're doing. And I'll tell you, once I come up with a solid name for the book, I'll let you know. I think I'm getting close. I think I may have landed on the title, but we'll have to see about that. But it's coming out soon. And people can actually sign up for the waiting list for the book by going to TreyGriggs.com if they want to learn more about that.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask. Where do people reach out to you? How do they connect with you?
Yeah, well, I've got my new website up, which is TreyGriggs.com. And they can connect with me through that. They can also connect with me on LinkedIn for sure. But that'd be the easiest way to do it.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have you back after the book comes out. We're going to dive into it some more. And, I just love talking about self-awareness. I love, I think it's just so critical. And, what we talk about as a whole here on All Grit, No Quit. And so I appreciate you coming on and lending your story.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Trey.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform and tell us what you liked. Be sure to subscribe to the show and connect with us on social media as we share more stories of every lesson and every comeback. Until next time.